by immigration may contribute more significantly to population growth than the birth rate. So natality is nothing but the number of births during a given period of time. When the limit of the resources has become exhausted, then the population will start to decline. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to another session of chapter 13, second PUC, that is Organisms and Population. I am Dr. Divya, Biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session of this chapter, we had discussed about the population, wherein we understood how the population can be measured based on the total number of individuals in that population and also based on the biomass of that population. And also we studied various attributes of a population as well as an individual. In today's session, we shall study how the growth rate of a population can be measured, wherein we will study about two important growth rate models, that is the exponential growth model and the logistic growth model. So to begin with, we shall see the size of a population. So the size of a population is not stagnant or it is not static, right? It tends to vary because of many reasons, be it birth, death, and also the movement of individuals to another region or the entry of individuals from another region. So therefore, the population size can be decided based on the natality, mortality, immigration and emigration. So what are these? We shall see. So first talking about natality. So natality is nothing but the number of births during a given period of time. So number of births means the number of birth actually adds on to a population. So the number of births in a given period of time is called as natality. So that also results in variation of the population size. Next is mortality. Mortality is nothing but, say for example, in a population of 50 individuals, 10 individuals have died, which results in reduction in the population. So mortality is the number of deaths in a given population in a given period of time is called as mortality. It is the death rate. Natality is the birth rate. So next is immigration. Immigration. One person or a group of individuals from another country entering into one particular country, it will increase the population of the country, right? So say for example, for Canada, it is the number of people are immigrating, that is people from India are moving into Canada. So in Canada, the population is increasing, it is immigration. Next in India, it is emigration. Why? Because people are moving out of India. In India, the population is decreasing. So talking about immigration, it is the number of individuals of the same species that have come into the habitat from somewhere else during a period of time. So you can see here people entering into a particular country will increase the population of that particular country and it is called as immigration. Next, emigration, the number of individuals of the population who left the habitat and gone elsewhere during a certain period of time. So here the individuals are moving out of their country, out of that particular country, therefore decreasing the population of that particular country. It is called as emigration. So therefore the population of a country usually varies, or the population size varies mainly because of natality, that is birth, mortality, death, and emigration, that is people moving out of a country, and immigration, people moving into a country. So these are the different reasons. So we shall look into it in detail. So say for example, we have studied in the previous session that the population density is represented as N. So the size of a population is nothing but called as population density. So here the natality, that is the birth. So the birth rate actually adds on to the population. It will increase in the population. So the birth in a particular country increases the population density. and the death actually decreases the population density. Next, immigration. Immigration increases the population because from some other country, individuals or population is migrating into a country, therefore increasing the population. So here, increase in population density. Emigration, from that particular population, people are going out of that particular population. So it will cause a decrease here. So, and these are represented by, and it can be calculated by a formula. Say for example, here N. So, N is the population density. So, N means it is the population density at time T. So, here N means it is population density. Then the time is T, here is the time. So, every time a population is measured per capita, right, at a particular time. So, T is the time here. Next, they have given at a time, then the density at time T plus 1. So, density at time T plus 1 means after a year or after a month or something. Whether it has increased or decreased, we need to check after a certain period. That is why it is called as T plus 1. So, the density at time T plus 1 is nothing but it is Nt plus 1. It is Nt plus 1. So, therefore, the density of a population at time T plus 1 means density of a population. Population density means N at time T plus 1. That is maybe after a week, maybe after a year. At time T plus 1 can be calculated as is equal to Nt. Nt means the density of a population at time T. So, say for example, T plus 1 is maybe 1 year, after a year. T is at that particular time what the population was. Now, we need to understand here the difference. T means at present, what is the population. T plus 1 means next, after a year or after a week or after a month, you will be calculating, right. So, that is T plus 1. So, here Nt plus B plus I, this is I, B plus I minus D plus E. So, B plus I minus D plus E. So, we will substitute. What is this? So, N is population density at a time T plus 1, that is after a certain period of time, is equal to density of population at the present time plus or previous year. It can be previous year also. Previous year. So, if you say you are calculating previous year with that of the present year, anything it can be. Plus B. B is natality rate plus immigration. Why? Natality and immigration will add on to the population. It will increase the population. Minus D is the mortality, E is the emigration. Mortality, that is death, and emigration will decrease the population. So, the value that you get after substituting will give you exactly the population density of a particular country at a given period of time. So, that is how, using this formula, the population density or population size is calculated. So, next, moving on to what are the different factors that influence the population of a particular geographical area or the population density of a particular area. The main factors that actually influence the population is the births and the deaths. So, say for example, if a new habitat is just being colonized, by immigration may contribute more significantly to population growth than the birth rates. Say for example, along with birth rate, the immigration also contributes. Immigration means people moving into a country. So, in that country, birth of the individuals are also increasing. Apart from that, people are also moving into that particular country, causing an increase in the population. Therefore, birth rate is also one of the important contributors of population along with immigration. So, if a new habitat is being colonized because of immigration, immigration may also contribute more significantly than that of the birth rate. So, both the birth rate and immigration decides the increase in the population of a country. So we shall understand about how the population growth occurs because of birth rate and death rate. Likewise, even death rate. So the death of individuals in the population and also the movement of individuals out of the population also decreases the population of that particular country. So all these are called as the growth rate. So what is the growth rate of the population? Whether the growth rate of the population is stable, whether it is increasing or whether it is declining. All that can be understood or explained by using growth models, that is two important growth models, exponential growth model and the logistic growth model. So in today's session, we shall study about these growth models, wherein first we shall learn about the exponential growth model. Say for example, if in a population of size n means it is nothing but the density, right? So if in a population of size n, the birth rates, which means it is not the total number but per capita. Here we are not calculating the individual birth rates. We are calculating the total number per capita birth rates. So I told you in the previous session, per capita birth rate. We are not calculating the births here. We are calculating the birth rate. So the birth rate should be considered, which is nothing but, so n is population size or population density, population size. Then we have to know the birth rate. So B is the birth rate and death rate. So death rate is represented by D. D is the death rate. Again, this also birth rate and death rate are measured per capita birth rate, per capita death rate. It is per capita birth rate, per capita death rate. Then the increase or decrease in N. Of course, it can be an increase or decrease in the population density. It will be an increase in population density if the birth is more. It will be a decrease in population density if the death is more, right? So, then the increase or decrease in the population density, that is N, during a unit time period. So, what is the unit time period? Here it is T into, in a unit time period. Remember there we had written T plus 1. That is in a given period, what is the total density? So here in a given time period for exponential growth, D is given by dn by dt. So dn means population, that is death rate in the population, and birth rate in the population, that is dn by dt. So here therefore dn by dt is equal to, that is the increase or decrease in the birth rate at a given period of time is equal to birth rate minus death rate into population density. So here B and D can be represented by R. So B minus D can be represented by R. So R is nothing but it is the intrinsic rate of natural increase in the population. So what is the intrinsic rate of natural increase in the population? So instead of calculating it as B minus D, it is represented by R. Then dN by dt is equal to Rn, means the population density because of natural increase in the population. So that is how dN by dt is calculated as is equal to Rn. So, and it is very important parameter that is used for assessing the impacts of any abiotic or biotic factor on a population growth. So, here again we can calculate because of what abiotic factors. Say for example, abiotic factors such as drought. So drought in a particular area might have caused the death of the individual, resulting in a decline in the population. Flood might have caused the death of the individual, resulting in a decline in the population. And also various biotic factors. Biotic factors can also contribute to the increase in the population. So here, using various parameters and using the equation dN by dt, the population density can be calculated. So this equation actually describes the exponential or the geometric growth pattern. Here we are talking only about the birth rate. If you know, here we are talking about the birth rate, that is the intrinsic rate of natural increase in the population density. So it is called as exponential growth. Here we are not calculating the death, but instead we are calculating how much growth has occurred, whether the growth has reduced or not. So growth has reduced means obviously more number of deaths would have occurred because of the growth has reduced. So here we are talking about the increase in the population, that is the exponential growth of the population. So here, and this particular graph results in a J-shaped curve when we plot n in relation to time, that is population density in relation to time. So if you see here, they have plotted the population density, that is n, in relation to time t. So population growth curve, this is the population exponential growth curve, wherein you can see will not talk about the other one. We are talking about the exponential growth curve here, this one. This one about the second growth curve, we'll talk about it in the next slide because it is about logistic growth. So this is exponential growth curve. So here, as you can see, the population is increasing. Why? Because we are talking about the growth rate here, the exponential, gradually the growth rates are increasing. So wherein dn by dt is equal to Rn. So this is a constant. So dn by dt is equal to Rn. So about all this k and all that we'll talk about in the next coming session. So other things we will talk about in the next slide. So here we can see that the exponential growth is occurring, wherein we have found out using the equation dn by dt is equal to Rn, where dn is nothing but the population death rate which has altered the population density divided by the death rate at a given time, which is equal to the increase in the growth rate, that is R, into the total density of population. So likewise, this is a exponential growth curve. Why? Because we are talking about the growth of the population here. So now, based on this growth model and based on the what happens if the population tends to grow continuously, we might just think what will happen every day, 1 or 2 individuals or 4 or 5 individuals are getting added to the population. What is the big deal with that? It's not correct. Why? Because we all know that one drop of water each time, every second, a drop of water will lead to a formation of a huge ocean, right? So the population of a country, every day if the population, if new births are occurring and the population is increasing, the population will tend to grow on a larger scale very, very fast. So that can be explained very clearly by using an example, that is a short story here, wherein there was a chess game between the king and his minister. So the king and his minister, while playing the game, they decided that whoever wins the game will have to compensate for it or will have to give something if they lose the game. So the king said, so the king already knew that he was going to win the chess game. So what he said was, if the minister loses or whoever loses in that particular game, they should place the wheat grain in one. So we know that in the chess board there are 64 checks. 64 checks. So in each of the check, they have to place one grain. That is, in first check, they have to place one wheat grain. Second one, they have to double, 2. Third one, again double, 2 to 4. 4, 4, 8, 8, 8, 16. So like that, it should go on doubling. So the minister was very happy. Okay, what will happen just to double each of the grains, right? Okay, whoever loses will, okay, he agreed to that. It's not a big deal. He agreed to that. So what happened? Finally, the king lost and the minister, he was supposed to place the grains. So when he reached 64, see here, when he reached this particular square itself, it was 2.1 billion. 2.1 billion wheat seed he has to place it when he reached this square. Imagine the last 64th square. So when the last 64th square had reached, the minister realized that even if we pool the entire wheat produced in the whole kingdom, we cannot compensate. So it is not possible to give to the king so much of wheat grain. So that is what we have to understand here. We might think what might happen, right? Only 1 or 2 is increasing. 2 times it is increasing. So imagine to increase every year, or every day if 2 to increase in the population is taking place, or if birth rates are increasing like this, then the population will drastically go up. It will soar. It will become too much. The country will become overly populated. So that is why regular checks on the population is very, very important. And the growth rate, that is why it should not be exponential. It is not good if the growth rate is exponential. There has to be growth, there has to be death rate as well in that particular population. It is important. So next, let us study about one more model, which is called as the logistic growth. In exponential growth, the growth curve was going up constantly, right? But in this particular logistic growth, there is some logic behind it. Can a population continuously grow? No. Sometimes a decline can occur in the population because of the death. Why will the death occur? It might be because of various diseases. It might be because of the competition between the individuals and many more reasons, right? So therefore, competition between individuals for limited resources will allow only the fittest people or fittest individual to survive and reproduce. It is Darwin's theory. What did Darwin say? Those who are fit will survive. It is survival of the fittest, right? So in a population, it is not necessary that all the people will get to eat every day. There are few people for whom it is very difficult to afford a meal even a day, right? So for such individuals, if such individuals are there in a population more, the population will decline. And also with the limited resources that are available, there will be lot of competitions between the individuals, therefore leading to death, and only those who are capable of surviving will survive and will contribute to the growth of the population. So in nature, a given habitat has enough resources in order to support a maximum possible population, but beyond that, can it support? It cannot support. So beyond that, when the limit of the resources has become exhausted, then the population will start to decline. So because in that case, the population will no longer grow. This is actually logistic. It is logic. That is what is happening every day, right? It is not that the population is continuously growing like this. There has been ups and downs in the population. So the logic behind this, because of competition for space, for resources, for everything. That is the reason. So here, let us call this limit as nature's carrying capacity, and it is depicted by K. So what is nature's carrying capacity? Until a limited population, the nature can provide resources to that particular population. But beyond that, the nature will not be able to provide resources for that, leading to a decline in the population. So that particular limit in the nature's population is called as nature's carrying capacity. How much the nature can hold, how much it can tolerate. So that is K. So the nature carrying capacity of the species and that particular population is represented by K, or in that particular habitat is represented by K. Since the resources for growth which is required for most of the animal population are finite. They are not infinite, right? They are finite. They will get over within a period of time. It is not infinite. It is finite, and they become limiting, or they get reduced very sooner or later, leading to the logistic growth model. So therefore, more than the exponential growth model, logistic growth model is considered the more realistic one, because it has a logic in that. Exponential growth we cannot consider. Every time the population will not increase, it will also, there will be increase, there will be decrease in the population, there will be a stable population, everything will happen in that particular population. Therefore, that is why logistic growth model is one of the most accepted growth models to study about the population size or population density. So let us understand this by looking into the graph. So here, the population growth in a habitat with limited resources will show initially a lag phase. So there is a lag phase, then there is an exponential phase, and then there is a steady phase, right? So here first, because of the limited resources in that particular habitat, there is this particular lag phase. So this is the lag phase. So slowly it is growing. Then comes the exponential phase. So somewhere here we will have the exponential. So now here exponential phase is growing, but again what happens after a certain time, because of the growth of the population, the number of resources will get exhausted and finally it will lead to the stable phase, or the resources might become limited, leading to a stable phase of the population and finally the decline in the population. So this one we can consider it as exponential. And this one the steady phase. Steady phase. So here, as we said, a population growing in a habitat with limited resources, at first it will show a lag phase, then it is followed by a phase of acceleration, that is exponential phase, growth phase. After that it will go into the growth phase and deceleration and finally asymptote. Asymptote is nothing but it will become stagnant. After decrease in population, now it will become stagnant. So first limited resources, therefore the growth of the population is very slow. After that, because of the slow growth, using the available resources itself, the population will grow drastically, that is exponential phase. After that it will start to slowly decline because the resources will be less, the population would have been growing. After the decline in the population, what happens now? The resources and the population both gets balanced and a steady state will be followed. So that is the logistic growth curve. So when the population density reaching the carrying capacity. Now this is the carrying capacity. So this phase, it is the carrying capacity, which is nothing but called as K. So this is the carrying capacity. So what has happened? Initially lag phase has occurred, slow growth in the population because food source is very less. After that, because of the slow growth of the population, the available food and the population gets balanced and the population starts to grow, which is the accelerating phase or the exponential phase. After that, because the growth of the population is more, the food resources becomes limiting, it will death of individuals, that is deceleration phase. Now the death of individuals has occurred, resources that is there is also enough. So now the population will become stagnant or it will become a steady state or a constant state, which is called as, now that is the time when the population has reached the carrying capacity. So that is the, it gives rise to a sigmoid curve, that is a S-shaped curve. So a plot N. So N here is population density. It is plotted against the time T, which results in a sigmoid curve. As you can see, it is a S-shaped curve. So that is why it is called as a sigmoid curve. So the same thing you have studied about, that is growth patterns. In that also, when studying about the plant growth pattern also, there also the sigmoid growth occurs in the plant. So we have studied that. This type of population growth is called as the Wehrhurst-Pearl logistic growth. So explain about Wehrhurst-Pearl logistic growth. We have to write this particular graphical representation. If you write this much is enough. No need of writing about the exponential growth. If you write about, so if you represent this graph, that is the carrying capacity we need to represent and the sigmoid curve we need to represent. If that is represented, it is enough. So that can be calculated by the following formula, that is dN by dt. D is death rate. So the total density of a population regarding death rate divided by the death rate at a given particular time is equal to this one, the increase in the population. It is because of growth. The increase in the population with that of the total density is equal to the carrying capacity minus the total density divided by the carrying capacity. So much if we calculate, we can find out the logistic growth of that particular population or the density of that particular population at a given period of time. So this is how it is calculated. So this was about this particular session wherein we studied about the measuring of the growth patterns using two different growth models, that is exponential phase and the logistic phase, among which logistic phase is the most preferred one as it actually looks into all the possibilities for a growth of the or decline in the particular population. So in the next session, we shall discuss about the population, the life history of variation in the population, what is the reasons for the variation in the population, and there are various reasons, that is predation, then commensalism, mutualism, so like pathogenesis. So there are various reasons why the variation in the population can occur. So each of these we shall study in the coming sessions, and in the next session, among these different variations in the population, we shall study about the predation. How predation actually causes a variation in the population, we shall study in the coming session. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.